The scorching Arizona sun beat down mercilessly as Josephine Keller wiped the sweat from her brow, wondering if taking over her late father's farm had been the biggest mistake of her life. The year was 1878, and the 22-year-old woman had spent the past 3 months trying to prove that a woman alone could manage a homestead, despite the whispers and doubts that followed her through town like persistent shadows. "Just one more row," she muttered to herself, pushing her pitchfork into the dry soil. The cotton plants wavered in the heat waves rising from the ground. Her dress clung uncomfortably to her body, the fabric damp with perspiration. Her wide-brimmed hat offered little relief from the punishing sun that hung overhead like a fiery medallion. The first wave of dizziness came suddenly. Josephine blinked rapidly, trying to clear the spots dancing before her eyes. The horizon tilted precariously, and she staggered, dropping her pitchfork. Her mouth felt like cotton, her lips cracked and parched. She hadn't brought enough water. Another rookie mistake in a long list of errors that threatened her independence. As the ground rushed up to meet her, Josephine braced herself for impact. But instead of the hard, unforgiving earth, she felt strong arms catch her, lowering her gently. "Whoa there, miss, I've got you." The voice was deep, tinged with concern. Through her haze, Josephine looked up into the face of a man she'd never seen before. His features were partially shadowed by his hat, but she could make out kind eyes and a strong jaw dusted with stubble. He wasn't from town, she would have remembered him. "You're burning up," he said, supporting her weight effortlessly. "Been out here long?" "Since dawn," she managed, her voice a rasp. He shifted, allowing her to lean against him more fully. "Lean on me," he said, his voice softer now. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. "Lean on me forever if you need to." The words floated in her consciousness as she fought to remain awake. She felt herself being lifted, carried away from the fields that had nearly claimed her life on this merciless summer day. "My farm," she protested weakly. "The farm will still be here tomorrow," he replied, his stride steady as he carried her toward the small farmhouse visible in the distance. "You won't be if you keep this up." Josephine wanted to argue, to insist she could manage on her own as she had been doing since her father's passing. But the comforting strength of this stranger's arms and the crushing reality of her situation silenced her protests. Instead, she surrendered to the darkness that enveloped her, wondering if the man's face had been real or merely a mirage conjured by the heat. When Josephine awoke, she was lying on her own bed, a damp cloth across her forehead. The late afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. For a moment, she wondered if she had managed to drag herself back to the house before collapsing. Then she heard movement in the kitchen. Pushing herself up on unsteady arms, she called out, "Who's there?" The stranger from the fields appeared in the doorway, a glass of water in his hand. In the better light, she could see him clearly now. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of a clear autumn sky. His clothing marked him as a working man, a cowboy, judging by the worn leather chaps and the distinctive hat he'd set aside. "Name's Owen Anderson," he said, approaching cautiously and offering her the water. "Found you about to kiss dirt out in your cotton field." "Heat exhaustion's no small matter, Miss Keller." She accepted the water, eyeing him suspiciously. "How do you know my name?" "Mailbox out front," he explained simply. "And folks in town mentioned the stubborn woman trying to run the Keller place on her own." Josephine bristled at that. "I'm not stubborn, I'm determined." A ghost of a smile played across his lips. "Way I see it, they're often the same thing." He pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat. "You were out for about an hour. I got some water into you, cooled you down. You should rest for the remainder of the day." "I can't afford to rest," she said, moving to stand. The room tilted dangerously, and Owen was beside her in an instant, his hand steadying her arm. "You can't afford not to," he countered. "Another hour in that sun, and I'd have been digging a grave instead of carrying you home." The bluntness of his words shocked her, but she recognized the truth in them. "Why did you help me, Mr. Anderson? Why were you even on my land?" "Passing through," he said, guiding her back to sitting on the edge of the bed. "Heading to the Triple R ranch up north. Saw you working from the road, thought I'd offer my services." "Good thing I did." Josephine studied him, trying to discern if there was any deception in his words. Men didn't typically offer help without expecting something in return, especially to a woman alone. "And what payment do you expect for your heroics?" Owen's expression hardened slightly. "None, Miss Keller. Contrary to what you might think, not every man has ulterior motives. Some of us were just raised proper." She felt a pang of guilt at his words. "I apologize, Mr. Anderson, it's just that. Since my father passed, I've learned to be cautious." His face softened. "No apology needed. It's a hard world, especially for a woman on her own." He stood and moved toward the door. "I should be on my way. Think you can manage now?" Josephine felt an unexpected reluctance to see him leave. "Wait," she said, surprising herself. "It's nearly supper time. The least I can do is offer you a meal before you continue your journey." Owen hesitated, then nodded. "That's kind of you, but only if you let me help prepare it. You still need to take it easy." For the first time that day, perhaps even that month, Josephine smiled genuinely. "I think I can agree to those terms, Mr. Anderson." "Owen," he corrected. "If we're sharing a meal, might as well use my given name." "Josephine," she offered in return, feeling a strange flutter in her chest as their eyes met. "But most call me Josie." Together they moved to the kitchen, where Owen insisted she sit while he assessed her pantry. His capable hands worked efficiently, preparing a simple but hearty meal of beans, cornbread, and the last of her preserved peaches. As they ate, he told her about his life as a cowhand, moving from ranch to ranch with the seasons, following the work. "Don't you ever yearn for something permanent?" she asked, curious about this nomadic existence so different from her own rooted life. Owen considered the question, his fork pausing midway to his mouth. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but a man needs more than yearning to put down roots. He needs purpose, something worth staying for." His eyes met hers briefly before returning to his plate. "What about you? Most women your age would be married by now, not fighting the elements alone on a struggling farm." Josephine sighed. "I had offers, but none that would have allowed me to keep the farm. My father built this place from nothing. I can't just abandon it." She looked around the modest kitchen, memories of her childhood saturating every corner. "This land is all I have left of him." Owen nodded in understanding. "Noble but difficult. Farming's hard enough with a full crew, let alone a single pair of hands." "Are you suggesting I can't do it?" she challenged, her earlier defensiveness returning. "I'm suggesting no one should have to do it alone," he clarified gently. "Man or woman." The conversation lulled as they finished their meal. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Owen helped clean up, then gathered his hat. "I appreciate the meal, Josie," he said, the nickname falling naturally from his lips. "I should reach the Triple R by tomorrow evening if I ride out now." She walked him to the door, an inexplicable sadness settling over her at his imminent departure. This stranger had shown her more kindness in an afternoon than she'd experienced in months. "Thank you," she said earnestly. "For everything today." Owen settled his hat on his head, tipping it slightly in acknowledgement. "Take care of yourself, Josie Keller. That means resting tomorrow, you hear?" She nodded, though they both knew she would be back in the fields at dawn. As he mounted his horse, a striking bay gelding, Owen paused. "I'll be at the Triple R for the season if you find yourself in need of assistance." He left the offer hanging. "I'll manage," she assured him, her pride still intact despite the day's events. With a final nod, Owen turned his horse and rode away, leaving Josephine standing in her doorway, watching until he disappeared into the gathering dusk. True to her nature, Josephine was in the fields before sunrise the next morning, though she conceded to Owen's influence by bringing twice the water and taking regular breaks in the shade of a lone oak tree at the field's edge. As she worked, she found her thoughts drifting to the cowboy more often than she cared to admit. There had been something in his eyes, a depth of understanding that had touched her 3 days past, each filled with backbreaking labor but also with the newfound wisdom to respect her limits. On the 4th day, as she was repairing a section of fence that had come loose, she heard the now familiar sound of hoofbeats approaching. Looking up, she saw Owen riding toward her, leading a wagon loaded with supplies. Her heart inexplicably quickened at the sight of him. "Mr. Anderson," she called as he drew closer. Lost your way to the Triple R, he reined in his horse beside her fence. Not lost, Miss Keller, just taking a detour, he gestured to the wagon. Brought some things you might find useful. Ranch had extra, and the foreman's a fair man who understands helping neighbors. Josephine's pride warred with practicality as she eyed the load of lumber, tools, and what appeared to be seed bags. That's very thoughtful, but I can't accept charity. Owen's expression remained impassive. Not charity. Consider it an investment in a neighbor's success. The Triple R benefits when surrounding farms thrive. He dismounted, tying his horse to the fence post. Besides, I told Mr. Rhodes about the woman single-handedly running the Keller place, and he insisted, said he respected grit. She wavered, knowing how desperately she needed these supplies but reluctant to accept help that might be seen as an admission of failure. If it makes you feel better, Owen added, sensing her conflict, you can repay the Triple R when your harvest comes in. Fair exchange, no charity involved. Slowly, Josephine nodded. I suppose that would be acceptable. Together, they unloaded the wagon, and Owen stayed to help her reinforce the fence properly. As they worked side by side under the hot sun, Josephine found herself enjoying his company, the easy way he explained things without condescension, and his respectful deference to her decisions about her own property. Why did you really come back? She asked as they took a break, sharing water under the shade of her oak tree. Owen looked out across her fields, his expression thoughtful. Couldn't stop thinking about you out here all alone, he admitted. Seemed wrong somehow. His honesty disarmed her. I've been alone for months. One more day makes little difference. Maybe it made a difference to me, he said quietly. Meeting her gaze directly, the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. For a moment neither spoke, the air between them charged with something unnamed but powerful. Owen cleared his throat and stood. Best finish this fence before sundown. They worked until dusk, accomplishing more in one day than Josephine could have managed in a week alone. When it was time for him to leave, she once again invited him to stay for supper, and once again he helped prepare it. This pattern continued over the following weeks. Owen would ride out from the Triple R on his days off, always bringing something useful: seeds, tools, knowledge. They fell into an easy rhythm, working together on the most pressing tasks, sharing meals, and gradually sharing more of themselves. Josephine learned that Owen had lost his parents young, raised by an uncle who taught him ranching. He'd been on his own since 16, working cattle drives and ranch jobs across the territory. He spoke of his dreams to someday have his own place, a modest spread where he could build something lasting. In turn, she told him about growing up on the farm, her mother's early death, and the close bond she'd shared with her father. She confessed her fears about failing, about losing the only home she'd ever known. You won't fail, Owen assured her one evening as they sat on her porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering darkness. You're too stubborn. Determined, she corrected with a smile, echoing their first conversation. His laugh was warm, genuine. That too. As July turned to August, Josephine realized that she had come to look forward to Owen's visits with an anticipation that went beyond appreciation for his help. She found herself paying more attention to her appearance on days she expected him, keeping a fresh dress ready, pulling her hair back more carefully. The townsfolk noticed the Cowboy's regular presence at the Keller farm. Whispers and speculation followed Josephine when she made her weekly trips for supplies. Some were kind, expressing happiness that she had found companionship. Others were less charitable, questioning her propriety in entertaining a man alone. People are talking, she told Owen one day as they harvested the first of her vegetables, the fruits of their combined labor. He straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. People always talk. Question is, does it bother you? She considered this. It shouldn't. It's my life, my farm. But he prompted, knowing there was more. But I've worked so hard to be respected, to prove I can manage on my own. I don't want them thinking I succeeded only because a man stepped in. Owen nodded thoughtfully. I understand pride, Josie, but there's no shame in accepting help. It doesn't diminish what you've accomplished. He paused, then added quietly, and for what it's worth, I'm not helping you because I think you can't do it alone. I'm helping because I enjoy being with you. The simple honesty of his statement warmed her more than the summer sun ever could. "I enjoy being with you too," she admitted, surprising herself with her boldness. A smile spread across his face, transforming his features. In that moment, Josephine realized she was falling in love with Owen Anderson, this kind, hardworking man who had literally caught her when she was falling and had been supporting her ever since. The realization terrified her. Love meant vulnerability, potential heartbreak. Owen was a cowboy, a drifter by his own admission. When the season ended at the Triple R, he would move on, following the next job, and she would remain here, bound to her land, possibly more heartbroken than before. Her change in demeanor must have been noticeable, for Owen frowned slightly. "Everything all right?" "Yes," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about all we still need to do before harvest." He seemed to accept this explanation, and they returned to their work, but something had shifted. Josephine found herself pulling back emotionally, guarding her heart against the inevitable pain of his departure. Over the next few visits, she maintained a deliberate distance, keeping their interactions focused on farm work rather than personal conversation. Owen noticed the change but didn't press her, respecting the boundaries she had erected. Then came the day of the summer storm. The sky had been threatening all morning, dark clouds gathering on the horizon. Josephine had been racing to secure what she could before the downpour began. She didn't expect Owen he hadn't visited in 3 days, and she told herself it was better this way, a gradual separation rather than a sudden goodbye. But as the first fat raindrops began to fall, she heard the familiar sound of hoofbeats. Owen appeared, already soaked, his horse moving at a gallop. "Storm's going to be bad," he called over the rising wind. "We need to get the livestock secured and reinforce that barn roof." Together they worked frantically, moving her small herd of goats and chickens into the barn, then climbing to the roof to secure loose shingles. The rain came down in sheets, making the work treacherous. Wind whipped around them, threatening to tear away the repairs as quickly as they made them. A particularly strong gust caught Josephine off balance. She slipped on the wet roof, sliding toward the edge. Owen lunged for her, catching her arm and pulling her back to safety, holding her tightly against him. "I've got you," he shouted over the storm, his arms solid around her waist. "I've always got you, Josie." In that moment, pressed against his chest, hearing his heart pound beneath her ear, Josephine stopped fighting her feelings. When they finally climbed down, both drenched and exhausted but triumphant in their battle against the elements, she made a decision. Inside the house, she built up the fire while Owen brought in more wood. When he returned, she handed him a towel and some of her father's old clothes. "You can change in my father's room," she said, gesturing down the hall. "You'll catch your death in those wet things." When he emerged, wearing her father's shirt and trousers that were slightly too short, she had hot coffee waiting. They sat before the fire, listening to the storm rage outside. "Thank you for coming today," she said finally, breaking the silence that had grown between them in recent weeks. "I don't think I could have managed alone," Owen nodded, his eyes on the flames. "I was worried when I saw the storm coming. Couldn't stay away knowing you were out here facing it alone." "Why?" she asked, needing to hear him say it. He turned to her then, his gaze direct and unwavering. "Because I care about you, Josie, more than I should, probably." "Why more than you should?" "Because I'm a cowhand with nothing to offer but my 2 hands and my word, and you're a woman with roots, with a place that means everything to you." He sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. "And because you've made it clear recently that you prefer to keep your distance." Josephine set down her coffee cup and moved to sit beside him. "I was afraid," she confessed, "afraid of caring for someone who would inevitably leave." "Who says it's inevitable?" Owen asked softly. "Isn't it?" "When the season ends at the Triple R, I could stay," he interrupted. "If I had a reason." Her heart leapt, but caution tempered her hope. "As what? A farm hand?" "As whatever you'd have me be, Josie." He took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against hers. "I've been on my own most of my life, moving from place to place, never staying long enough to call anywhere home. But these past weeks, working alongside you, sharing your table, it's the first time I've felt like I belonged somewhere." Tears welled in Josephine's eyes. "I've been so determined to prove I don't need anyone that I almost missed what it means to want someone." Owen's free hand rose to cup her cheek. "And do you want me?" In answer, Josephine leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Owen pulled her closer. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "Is that a yes?" he asked, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Yes," she whispered. "Stay, Owen, not as my farm hand but as my partner in everything." "I'd like nothing better," he said, kissing her again as the storm continued to rage outside, unnoticed by the two people who had found shelter in each other's arms. The following morning dawned clear and brilliant, the storm having washed everything clean. Josephine woke to find Owen already outside, assessing the damage and beginning repairs. She watched him from the doorway, marveling at how right it felt to see him there, moving about her farm as if he belonged. When he spotted her, his face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. "Morning," he called. "Barn held up well, but we lost some fencing on the north side." "We'll fix it together," she replied, emphasizing the word "we" with a happiness she couldn't contain. Over breakfast, they discussed their future. Owen would finish his contract at the R, which had another month to run, but would continue helping at Josephine's farm whenever possible. After that, they would formally join their lives and work the land as partners. "People will talk," Owen pointed out, echoing her earlier concern. Josephine laughed. "Let them. I've stopped caring what anyone thinks except you." True to their word, they spent the next month dividing Owen's time between the R and the Keller farm. Together, they prepared for the cotton harvest, repairing equipment and planning their approach. The work was still hard, the days long, but shared between them, it felt manageable in a way Josephine had never experienced before. Word spread through the community about their arrangement. Some neighbors, who had been distant during Josephine's solo tenure, began to stop by, offering additional help or equipment loans now that a man was in the picture. It irritated her, but Owen encouraged her to accept the assistance gracefully. "They're coming around in their own way," he said. "And every pair of hands makes the work lighter." When harvest time arrived, the cotton yield was better than Josephine had dared hope. With Owen's guidance and her own determined management, they brought in a crop that not only paid her debts, but left enough to invest in improvements for the following season. On the evening after the last bale was collected, Owen surprised her by arriving at the farmhouse with a small box in hand. Josephine had been preparing a celebratory dinner, her heart light with the success of their harvest and the promise of their future together. "What's this?" she asked as he presented the box to her. "Open it and see," he urged, an uncharacteristic nervousness in his manner. Inside lay a simple gold band, obviously not new but polished to a warm glow. "It was my mother's," Owen explained. "The only thing of hers I kept all these years. I've carried it with me, waiting for the day I'd find someone worthy of wearing it." Josephine's eyes filled with tears as he took the ring and knelt before her. "Josie Keller, when I caught you in that field months ago, something told me I was exactly where I needed to be. You've given me what I've searched for my whole life, a place to belong, a purpose worth staying for." His voice grew husky with emotion. "I'm asking you to lean on me forever, just like I said that first day. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered, her voice catching. "Yes, Owen, I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to kiss her, sealing their promise to each other. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in town, with the R hands and a few neighbors as witnesses. The ceremony was simple, but Josephine felt her father's presence as Owen stood beside her, steady and true, speaking vows that echoed the promise he'd made when they first met. As winter settled over the farm, they worked together to prepare for spring planting. In the evenings, they sat before the fire, planning expansions to the house and discussing crops for the coming year. Sometimes, Josephine would catch Owen looking at her with such tenderness it made her breath catch. "What are you thinking?" she asked one such evening, curled against his side. "I'm thinking about the day I found you in that field," he said, his arm tightening around her. "How close I came to riding past, to missing this life we're building." She turned her face up to his. "I believe we were meant to find each other, Owen. All my stubbornness, all your wandering, it led us exactly where we needed to be." As spring returned to the Arizona territory, Josephine and Owen faced the new planting season together. The farm that had once been her burden had transformed into their shared dream, expanding and flourishing under their combined care. And when summer came again, bringing with it the memory of their first meeting, Josephine found herself once more in the cotton fields, though now with joyful news to share. As Owen approached across the field, bringing her water as he always did during the hottest part of the day, she straightened from her work, one hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Careful in this heat," he cautioned, handing her the canteen. "Don't want a repeat of last year." Josephine smiled, taking his hand and placing it where hers had been. "We'll have to be doubly careful now," she said softly. "There's someone else to consider." Understanding dawned in Owen's eyes, followed by a joy so pure it transformed his weathered face. He gathered her in his arms, lifting her off her feet in an embrace that spoke volumes more than words ever could. As he set her down, he kept his arms around her, his forehead resting against hers. "Lean on me," he whispered, echoing the words that had begun their journey together. "Both of you, lean on me forever." And in the golden fields that had once nearly defeated her but now represented their shared triumph, Josephine made a silent promise to do exactly that, to lean on this good man who had become her strength, her partner, her home. Together, they had transformed a moment of weakness into a lifetime of love, proving that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from knowing when to lean on someone else.